FSU head coach Mike Norvell released a statement yesterday that reads in part, quote, "I'm disgusted and infuriated with the committee's decision today to have what was earned on the field taken away because a small group of people decided they knew better than the results of the games. What's the point of playing the games? I don't understand how we're supposed to think this is an acceptable way to evaluate a team. I'm hurting for our players who have displayed a tremendous amount of resilience and response this season. What happened today goes against everything that is true and right in college football. A team that overcame tremendous adversity, found a way to win, doing whatever it took on the field, was cheated today. It is a sad day for college football." It's great to be joined by former FSU quarterback, current ACC Network analyst, EJ Manuel. EJ, good morning, and thank you so much for being with us. I want to jump right into it. What was your reaction to the Seminoles being left out of the playoff?
Well, I was also infuriated, and thank y'all for having me. Look, this is a Florida State team that is 13-0, period. That's the fact. They found a way to still win a game with their backup quarterback against their rival, also on the road in Gainesville. They also found a way to win their ACC championship game with their third-string quarterback. Now, I understand that teams need to have a quarterback to go out there and score points. Losing Jordan Travis certainly takes a huge hit to this Florida State team. But, guys, we all know you can still win games with defense. And let's also take off the top for a second and put the jersey back on. If you're a part of this football team, if you're a player on this football team, if you're a coach on this football team, and you go through the entire season unblemished, you beat every single team that is before you, and you still get to this point and you can't get into the college football playoff to then have the opportunity to compete for a championship, that's wrong. And I think any athlete that has played the game knows that's wrong. And I think it also changes the integrity of the game by not giving this team the opportunity to play. You got two teams that both lost one game in front of Florida State. And I get, hey, Alabama, they beat the number one team in the country in the SEC championship game. But ultimately, you cannot take away an opportunity for a Florida State team to get a chance to battle for a championship just because their quarterback's out the game. This is the game of football, not the game of quarterback. And I played the position. Dan, you played the position too. We all know how important it is to have a QB on the field. You guys just talked about two great ones, Jordan Love and Patrick Mahomes. But ultimately, if those teams win enough games to go to a playoff in the NFL, you're still going to go to the playoff. It's not going to be a committee of 13 people with great football minds, supposedly, to make a decision over that team's fate. That's the wrong thing to do.
Okay, I hear what you're coming from, and I understand that, and I appreciate the fact that you're disgusted. Well, let me warn you, you're about to be more disgusted because I respectfully disagree with you. I respectfully disagree with you. Let's get a couple of things out of the way first. Number one, you done messed up and lost your argument when you brought up the word integrity in the NCAA. You done messed up right there because we all know that that's been problematic for them for decades. That's number one. Number two, even though they were undefeated, this isn't the first snub that happened. TCU and Baylor in 2014, Ohio State in 2018, Central Florida in 2017. There's been various examples. Let's also go to strength of schedule. Alabama had the 5th best strength of schedule in the country. Florida State's was 55th. Let's go to this one as well. This is very, very important, and this is the point that I brought up last week, and I'm going to say it to you again. The people that you should be blaming most is TCU. TCU went into the national championship last year against Georgia and got beat down and bum rushed, 65-7. We have learned that college sports, particularly college football, is a business. The reality is when you take that into consideration and Jordan Travis is out and you looked at the way y'all struggled to beat Louisville 16-6, which wasn't the most impressive way to go out, what you had was a committee that looked at what transpired last year, took into account what we've been seeing from Alabama the last 11 weeks, understanding that they they closed the deal by beating the number one ranked team in the nation, who, by the way, happens to be the reigning, defending, two-time national champions, okay? So they took them out, all right? And obviously, you got to take that into consideration. And so what I'm saying to you is this. There's a lot of things that we don't want to go, Shannon, and I'm going to go to you and Dan. I'm going to say this because I'm going to say this is going to be very, very uncomfortable. But it's necessary to say this. I brought up TCU. You know what else I'm going to bring up?
What that?
I'm going to bring up primetime Deion Sanders. I bet you if primetime Deion Sanders was that coach, they wouldn't have gotten left out. And Norvell is a sensational coach and has done a sensational job, and I'm not taking anything away from him. But why do I bring that up? Because if Primetime had an undefeated team, the sizzle that he brings to the sport matters. We want to act like it doesn't matter, but it matters because it's a business. And the reality is that when TCU stinks up the joint, regardless of how great they were last year, these are the kind of things that come back to haunt you because the committee is sitting back and going like this. Damn. It's Texas, it's Washington, it's Michigan. we don't need to see Florida State without Jordan Travis in that game. It's unfair. We know it's unfair. Florida State deserved better. Incredible season on their part. Very unfortunate, but Kirk Herbstreit spent yesterday educating us that part of the committee's critique, or criteria rather, is player and coaches' availability. That's one of the nuggets that they threw in there. That can't be ignored.
Now, Stephen A., if I could just interject. So are you telling me once Jordan Travis got hurt against North Alabama, Florida State should just went ahead, packed their bags, and just end the season at that point? That's basically what you're saying.
No. What I'm saying is what the Florida State should have done is won how Ohio State won when Cardale Jones?
They did win with great defense. They did that.
I'm saying, remember, they get their quarterback, I think JT Barrett, right? They beat Wisconsin 59-0, went into the playoffs, and then won a national championship. Y'all brothers struggled against Louisville.
Wisconsin, no, we talking about Wisconsin versus the Florida Gators in a rivalry game.
I understand
also
that,
at Ben Hill
but that's what they're talking about, EJ.
I understand.
That's what they're talking about.
But see, that's the difference, and that's my issue again is, guys, we're not talking about – see, this is where we – in college football, it's more about the storyline. It's more about who can bring in numbers, viewership. That's how I see it. I work in this side of business now. I'm doing the analyst job. And as a player, that's why I said take the tie off, take the jacket off. As a player, you know this is not right.
If they had lost Benson or Johnny Wilson or someone else that isn't the person who touches the ball on every single play, we all can be honest and say the quarterback is the most important person on the football field for 99% of the football teams. Okay? That team did not beat LSU. The one with Jordan Travis did. So that has to matter for the committee. Whether I like it, agree with it, or not, that matters to the committee. EJ, I'd say this. The day that it broke, I was on show with you guys, and the news broke about Jordan's injury, who I feel awful for.
Yeah.
I said, Florida State, if they win their next 2 games, should still be in the playoff. And then they play Florida, who had a backup quarterback playing, and it was a bad Florida this year, and don't play well. Going into the ACC title game, EJ, straight up honest, I said, if they win like 35-0, I think they're in. But they did not play well. And so the committee has to watch an Alabama control the SEC title game. I don't want to say dominate, but control.
Yes.
And Florida State just not play great again. Then they have to make the determination of who is the 4th best team. Not most deserving. Again, don't like it, but that's their job.
I agree with you, Stephen A. And EJ, I know this is tough hill because you went to Florida State and you bleed that burgundy and gold.
Big dog. Yes, sir.
Yeah, bro. I understand that. And you guys, maybe sometimes you don't get what you deserve, you get what you earn. And when Alabama win 11 straight games and they go and they beat what many thought was do the unthinkable, take down a team that hadn't lost in 2.5 years, and to beat them. I told Molly them, we had this conversation last week. I said, if Alabama beat Georgia, there's no way they're going to leave 2 SEC teams home that's 12-1.
Yeah, you did.
That's not going to happen. And I say probably the odd team out is going to be Florida State because of Jordan Travis's injury. But you have Coach Saban, who's the pantheon of college coaches. You have the program, which is Alabama. And we know what they represent. And you got 3 blue bloods. You got Michigan, you got Texas, and you got Alabama. Washington is an outlier, but we knew Washington was going to make it. They beat Oregon twice. So I got no problem with them. I got no problem with Michigan. Now it's going to come down to Texas, Bama, and Florida State. And when you look at it, I just – and Boo Kerrigan said it. Florida State is a different team. You look at who they are as the team without Jordan Travis. There are different teams.
It stinks for them.
Can I say this?
Like, it's the unfortunate break that they caught.
Two things to point up, EJ, I'm coming right back to you, but let me say this. 2 things. Number one, the SEC has never been left out of the playoffs. You understand? And I was saying that there ain't no way in hell Georgia and Alabama is going to be left out. That just wasn't going to happen.
What happened?
That's number, because you're talking about the top 4 teams in the nation. Nobody on the planet believes that Alabama and Georgia don't belong in the top 4. Nobody on the planet believes that. That's number one. Number 2, some interesting numbers that I have here. The committee, if I remember correctly, EJ, you would know this, Dan Orlovsky, you would know this, 5 ACC reps on the committee.
Sure.
5. 2 of them from the SEC. And Boo Corrigan is got ACC roots.
I think he's the AD.
Exactly. So I'm like, wait a minute now. This is an ACC school that was left out, and you got 5 members of the committee from the ACC, including the head of the committee.
Yeah.
Come on now.
Well, absolutely. And I also think, guys, I mean, we all can agree that the narrative on air matters too, because this narrative started 3 or 4 weeks ago as well, even before Jordan Travis got injured. And I think that's the outrage, that's the anger, at least from me, because the conversation was already that Jordan Travis being the starting quarterback of this team. This is before North Alabama. Kirk Herbstreit, Des Howard, they both said Florida State doesn't belong. Alabama should be in, and especially if Texas, who has already beaten Alabama, if Bama then beats Georgia, those two should be in. But again, that's not right. That's not honoring winning all your games as a Power 5 champion. Guys, Florida State is Florida State. This is not a group of 5 team, and I understand you mentioned in TCU. They're not the same. Florida State is a Power 5 champion.
That's fair, but EJ, nobody would have thought that Florida State, if Jordan Travis were playing and they were undefeated, nobody was going to leave Florida State out.
I agree.
But ultimately, go ahead.
Let me ask you a question, EJ. Honest here. Big 12 title game. Quinn Ewers goes down, gets hurt. You think they get in? Can't play.
No.
There you go. But they're not undefeated. They had one loss.
I understand, but that's like
right.
Okay.
But
that's my point. It stinks.
When it comes to programs in college football, it's Alabama. It's Alabama. It's Nick Saban. You gonna leave Nick Saban home twice? You left him home. It's the Alabama Invitational for a reason. When I dubbed it that in 2017,
but they've earned
Alabama. They earned it this year. Yeah.
But they're one of the 4 best teams.
Yeah, for sure.
That team that lost to Texas is a different team.
I got news for you. Georgia's one of the best 4 teams.
Yes.
But you couldn't have both of them in there.
No.
But you got to have
one of the best 4 teams, too. That's
what Georgia
Well, best is all subjective. You might think best. I might think best. EJ thinks best.
Really?
It is.
We talking Georgia, the reigning 2-time defending national champion
I'm not
that
debating
hadn't
you on
lost
that.
in 2.5 years. There's no debating that.
I'm not debating.
They're clearly one of the best 4 teams in the nation, but you can't put them in the college football players when you don't have an SEC title and you got the 1 loss.
I'm not debating you.
So
you can't do that.
Fellas. Since we keep talking about the SEC, Florida State is 2-0 against SEC opponents. LSU beat them, blew them out, all right, 21 points. I understand the beginning of the season with Jordan, sure. Also beat Florida with their backup. All right, Florida State is in a conference in the ACC. Overall was 6-4 against the SEC opponents. So that's why I say it still doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to obviously Coach Norvell. It doesn't make sense to any of these players.
Let me help you out, and let me help you out and make it sense.
All right, last word here, Stephen A.
You didn't look good to close out the season.
Yeah, well, we're talking look test.
You didn't look good. And after TCU got blown out last year, they were worried about the specter of another potential national championship game with an undermanned crew that wasn't going to be able to show up and get it done. That was the concern.
I don't disagree.
We're going to have this. I remember when they used to take just the top 2 teams. So that means Michigan and UW. I can't believe they left Alabama. They left Texas. So now we go to 4. And 4 is not good. 4 is not enough. Guess what? When they go to 12.
But this year's the perfect example that 4 isn't enough.
12 is not going to be enough.
When you have somebody that's outside of the SEC or outside of the Big Ten, you really have to make a compelling case in terms of the visual. You've got to show them that, you're elite and you cannot be ignored. Give TCU credit. They beat Michigan last year.
Yeah.
But to lose the national championship game 65-7, you're the college football committee. You cannot risk having back-to-back years of that kind of atrocity. And by the way, at the expense of leaving the entire SEC conference out.
Right.
Because Texas was going to be in there, right?
Yes.
So, okay, we pick Florida State. But no Alabama and no Georgia, who had won 29 straight, who was the reigning 2-time defending national champions. Excuse me, they win, there's nothing to discuss here. But if they lost, and you got Alabama, you're an SEC champion, you won 11 straight. You basically look at what they did with the quarterback from week 2 to what we see from him now. He's a stud and a star now. And then on top of it all, you not only win the SEC championship, okay, and win 11 straight, but look the way that you look, and Nick Saban's your quarterback. Last point. Shannon, I said this to Shannon earlier. Paul Finebaum, Mad Dog Russo. I throw this out there. I said if primetime Deion Sanders was at Florida State, because that's the job he wanted, and he had gone 12-0, I don't think they leave him out. I mean, I'm not saying it's fair. I'm not saying it's right. But sizzle matters.
Yeah.
You know, presentation matters, and allure to draw in ratings matter. And with NIL now being in place, now you don't have to disguise the fact that it's a business anymore. It's clearly been a business all of these years, but even more so now. So all of those things contribute to what my opinion was, and I stand by it. No joking aside.
You should. Paul, we talked last week, and I said if Alabama beats Georgia, there ain't no way in hell they're going to leave 2 12-1 SEC teams out. I said Alabama's going to get one of those spots. I said they're leapfrogging somebody because that's Nick Saban and that's Alabama, the most recognizable college program in the country today. The Pantheon coach today and yesterday and tomorrow and moving forward. They're not leaving him home. Won 11 straight games. And the fashion in which they took down Georgia because Georgia had the lead and they walked them. Man, no, they weren't leaving them home. In Florida State, I get it. You're in the ACC, you go 13-0, you win the conference title, the regular season and the postseason. But no, I don't believe Florida State is better than Alabama. I don't believe they're better than Texas. And you weren't about to leave 2 SEC teams home that went 12-1, Georgia and Alabama.
And by the way, fellas, Mad Dog, Paul, listen, as my boy Jeff says, fair is a place where they judge pigs. It doesn't exist. We all know that.
Yeah, I'm from the country,
all know
so
that.
I all know
And
been there.
by the way, SEC, which is pretty much recognized as the best conference in football, 13 of the last 17 national champions, by the way. Never, ever, ever has an SEC team been left out of the college football playoffs. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, Alabama, led by Nick Saban, is 11-1 in SEC championship games. And by the way, of their last 40 victories, last 42 games, you talk about Georgia going 40-0 against everybody else and like 0-2 against Alabama.
1-2. They won.
1-2. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Chris, let me ask you this. Oh,
But
go ahead.
here's one, Molly. Here's one for all of us. Paul, especially you. If Travis doesn't break his leg and they beat Florida easy and they look good Saturday night against Louisville, 35-3, what would the committee have done then? That's very interesting. Because that injury played into it, Paulie.
No.
That injury played into it.
Totally agree. I think if they were rolling, and they didn't look like they were terrible in the last 2 games of the year against a middling Florida and a average. Louisville's not a great team. They're a good team. I think Florida State would have been in, Doggy. And the committee, everyone blames the committee. I was watching CNN last night, and some anchor said, this is wrong. This is preferential treatment. No, it's not preferential treatment. Alabama got left home last year. Alabama was number 5 in the polls, and they were better than TCU. We all know that. But,
Yes,
but Doggy's right. Jordan Travis this is about him. When he broke his leg, he really endangered that team. That was still not, I think, a top 2 or 3 team, but they would have justified it because that's how these committee members think. They finally said, you know what, we have to do what we're supposed to do, and for the first time, they actually did it. They put the 4 best teams in with 1 asterisk. Georgia is also one of the best teams in the country, but they just had to sacrifice to make room for Alabama because they lost.
Hey, listen. Let's not let Florida State completely off the hook in this regard. Yes, they won. That is true. They were undefeated. Yes. But if we remember, 2014, J.T. Barrett goes down for Ohio State. Cardale Jones comes up in there, and they smoke Wisconsin 59-0.
Yes.
They get into the college football playoffs, and they win the national championship. What did Florida State do? They didn't look great against Florida, and they didn't look great against Louisville.
Right.